Welcome to this session of Understanding Human Anatomy. In this video, I'm going to complete our discussion of the heart by talking about the conduction system of the heart. Now, cardiac muscle has the property of inherent rhythmicity. That means cardiac muscle beats without a nervous stimulus. Unlike the skeletal muscle, which must receive a signal from a nerve to begin beating, cardiac muscle will beat entirely on its own. And different parts of the heart have a different rate of contracting. To make the heart function efficiently, there needs to be a control on that rhythm. So the heart has its own conduction system. This conduction system is often incorrectly described as being the nervous system of the heart. And the reason that's false is it is not composed of nerve tissue. It is composed of cardiac muscle. Highly modified cardiac muscle. Remember that there are two types of tissue that are modified, highly modified, to conduct an action potential. Nerve, obviously, and muscle. And so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise to see that we can use muscle to conduct an action potential through an organ like the heart, which has the added advantage of it being able to function as muscle as well as a vehicle for transmission of action potentials. The biggest advantage of the conduction system of the heart is that it organizes and coordinates the beating of the heart. With the conduction system, each heartbeat begins in the pacemaker and then spreads orderly throughout the heart. So, let's take a look at the components of this conduction system. You see in this diagram that I have a heart that has essentially been sliced down the middle so that we can see the right atrium, right ventricle, a little bit of left atrium, a little bit of left ventricle, We have the tricuspid valve with the chorda tendineae and the papillary muscles. We have the mitral valve with chorda tendineae and papillary muscles. The interventricular septum, we also see here the interatrial septum, and the wall, the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the opening of the coronary sinus. Now, the pacemaker of the heart is a structure called the SA node. And I'm going to paint the SA node in here. I'm making it larger than it actually is in relation, but I want it to be nice and visible. The SA node and the SA node is the pacemaker. The SA stands for sinoatrial node. We find it in the right atrium near where the superior vena cava joins the right atrium. It's a structure that's actually derived from the primitive sinus venosus. So that's why it's sinoatrial. That part of the sinus venosus becomes incorporated into the right atrium. So this is the starting point. And the pacemaker initiates each beat of the heart. And when it reaches its threshold potential, it conducts an action potential, and that action potential is conducted through the heart muscle. And all those action potentials then converge on another node, the AV or atrioventricular node. And the AV node is in the wall of the atrium, right at the junction with the ventricle. And let me draw a line over to it. And just so there's no mistake, I'll draw a line over here to the SA node as well. Now, the AV node then is the point of transmission of the signal to beat from the atria down to the ventricles. What will happen is that the AV node connects to modified cardiac muscle called the interventricular bundle. Okay, this is the interventricular bundle. And the older name for it is the bundle of His. You may still see that name. The interventricular bundle. And its name is self-explanatory. It's a bundle of modified cardiac muscle cells, cardiac muscle fibers, that is sitting in the interventricular septum and running through the interventricular septum. The AV node and its connection to the interventricular bundle is the only pathway from the atrium to the ventricle for an impulse, for an action potential. So action potentials that come over to the other edges, any other place, there's no connection muscle to muscle so that the impulse can spread. Only this one place. Now, the interventricular bundle divides into a left and a right bundle branch. And these bundle branches are situated so that they pass underneath papillary muscles, so that the papillary muscle gets a signal ahead of the rest of the ventricular musculature. We're going to find that from the right bundle branch is an extra branch that runs through the moderator band over to the papillary muscle on the anterior wall of the right ventricle. And that's because the bundle branch doesn't get to this muscle, and we have to get the impulse there first. The reason the papillary muscles get the signal to contract a small fraction of a second before the rest of the ventricular musculature is so that these muscles can start contracting to keep tension on the chordae tendineae. Remember, their function is to take up slack in the chordae tendineae. And to do that most efficiently, they have to be getting shorter before the heart beats as a whole. And so this system is developed so that the bundle branches go under two papillary muscles on each side, and then the moderator band takes the impulse over to the third papillary muscle on the right side, in the right ventricle. Now, from the position of the interventricular bundle and from the video on the coronary circulation, you see that the anterior descending coronary artery is running parallel to the interventricular bundle, and indeed it's giving off branches to supply the interventricular bundle. This is one of the reasons why an infarct of the anterior descending coronary artery can have catastrophic effects. It will block transmission of the impulse from the pacemaker to the ventricle. And when that happens, the ventricular musculature beats on its own. Each individual cardiac muscle cell will beat at its own rate. Nothing will be coordinated, and this is called fibrillation. And when you see a heart in fibrillation, it looks like a bag of worms. It's just kind of wiggling there. It's not pumping blood. It's every little muscle cell is beating at its own rate. Nothing is coordinated. And an infarct of the interventricular septum in the area of the interventricular bundle is most likely to cause sudden death from a heart attack. So that's the conduction system. The SA node, the pacemaker, the impulse then passes to the AV node, and the AV node is the only pathway from the atria down to the ventricle, and it transmits the impulse down the interventricular bundle, which divides into left and right bundle branches. Moderator band is part of this system and brings the signal to contract to the ventricular musculature. That concludes our discussion of the conduction system of the heart. Thank you for your attention.